Gosh. Okay.
And then as soon as it does start, I'm going to mute it. Otherwise, I'll hear two of us.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we just started. So again, sorry guys, we were not transmitting. Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here and have Adam as a guest. It will be very interesting and I hope very useful for you guys. Feel free to ask in the chat and we will choose some of your questions. All right. My name is Susel. I'm the tutor from the English course related to the TOEFL test. And well, I would like to introduce Adam, but please, if you can do it.
Sure. So first of all, thank you, Zeus, and to you and your course for having me here. And thank you to everybody who's tuning in to watch this. My name is Adam Halpert. I'm a Canadian from Montreal, although right now I am in Mexico, in Querétaro. And my apartment is pretty close to the road, so hopefully there won't be any disturbances as we're speaking today. But the tamales man might go by, or the mattress man, or the trumpet man. So we might have some disturbances, but hopefully it won't be an issue. Just a quick bit of background from me. I did my bachelor's degree in psychology with a specialization in neuroscience. Afterwards, I went immediately into an MBA program at McGill University. And McGill University is actually where I've spent most of my career. I was a manager in a few different units, but what's most relevant for our conversation today is that I spent 3 years working as a career coach, specifically for MBA students, and became associate director of MBA Career Services. So in that capacity, I worked with probably about 200 students as they, came to Canada. They were paying about 90,000 Canadian dollars just for the tuition for the 2-year program. So they had very high expectations in terms of, how their career would advance following a master's degree. And we did everything from career strategy, working on their personal branding, their CVs, their cover letters, their interviewing skills, how to network, how to negotiate job offers. And in that capacity, I would work with our admissions team. So they would ask for my input on, Adam, can you interview this candidate? Give us your feedback on this candidate. Sometimes also what the admissions team does at universities is they allocate scholarship funds. So they would sometimes ask for our opinion on which candidates should receive scholarships, and if so, for how much. So, that really positioned me to see how things work on the inside of a graduate school program, and in particular, both with career services and with admissions. I actually left my job at the university in 2019, and I started my own company. I'm actually still working quite a bit with McGill University, which we call the Harvard of the North. And actually, one of the things that I'm doing on the side, which sort of led Zeus to invite me to participate in this conversation, is I am currently offering private career coaching and admissions consulting on the side. So I've probably worked with about 150 people who have been applying to, top grad schools. A lot of them were management programs, so finance or MBAs, but a lot of them were data science, fashion management, PhDs, but most often for top schools in, the United States, Canada, and Europe for the most part. A lot of Latin Americans. It's super rewarding. I'll just say this week I got 2 messages from clients, which I'll read to you because it's so exciting. So one of them said, "Dear Adam, apologies for taking so long to update you. Ultimately, I interviewed at 6 of the 9 programs that I applied to. I was accepted at all 6. These include Harvard, University of Washington, Chicago, Oregon, Columbia University, and Duke University. Today, I accepted my offer at Harvard after weeks of decision-making. Thank you so much for your help in this process." And then the same day, I got another one that said, "Hey, Adam, I want to let you know that I've been admitted to 100% of the schools that we applied to. I'm choosing Columbia and London Business School, my number 1. Thanks so much." So it's just so exciting to see how people's lives can change. I mean, this is maybe a whole other topic. It's not about how to get in, but maybe why to apply. But I have really seen people's lives transformed by their participation in graduate school. So that makes me excited to be here today to talk to you about this topic and to work with people who are currently trying to get into graduate schools. I'm happy to take questions throughout or at the end. Zusel, I defer to you on that one.
Yeah, thanks. Guys, if you don't understand anything, please ask it and I can paraphrase it in Spanish or repeat it or help you translating some questions, right? Adam ha trabajado mucho tiempo en McGill, que es una de las mejores universidades de Canadá, y específicamente él asesora para corregir tus cartas de aplicaciones. Entonces, si alguien después quiere asesorías particulares, pueden encontrar la información en el post, ¿ok? Okay, Adam, so let's start. I just want to be sure that the audio, it's fine. Can you listen to him correctly, guys? ¿Sí se escucha bien, Adam? Nada más quería estar como segura de que... I did myself smaller so you can see yourself, and maybe because like it's easier to understand you and watching your movements and everything. But okay, bueno, vamos a ir cambiando. We will be changing. A ver, nada más. I'm just waiting for the confirmation that they can hear you well. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. A ver, Ada. So we have tons of questions probably. And we would like to start, from the beginning, before applying, right? So please tell us where to start. What do you recommend us before applying for a certain program?
In a way, it's tough to answer that because everybody's situation is so individual and unique. But where I would really start at is if you're thinking about going to graduate school, you're thinking about going to graduate school for a reason. And so to really think about what is your goal and researching, what it would mean to achieve your goal. So I'll give you an example. Something that I saw often with less prepared candidates when I was working at McGill University is somebody might say in their application essay, I'm applying to do the McGill MBA because I really want to immigrate to Canada and work in the technology sector. And I'd like to search for jobs at Google or Apple or Amazon or Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Those companies don't have big operational offices in Canada. They're mostly in the United States, or they're in Europe, or they're in other places. So, whenever we would read these admissions, essays, we would always say, has this candidate done his or her homework? And so in that regard, I think the first step is really researching, what it would mean to achieve your goals. Is this school really going to help you, take those steps forward? And then obviously that involves researching the target program. So really understanding what are the ins and outs, what's the coursework, what are the extracurricular activities, who are the professors? I think it's also important to reflect on, if you're going to be applying to graduate school, what are your priorities? Do you really want to do a 2-year program, or is it important to do a 1-year program? Does the location matter a lot? If you want to immigrate to the UK, how important will it be to choose a school in the UK versus a school in the United States? Is it important to choose a top-ranked school? Because a lot of people obviously would prefer to get into like a top 10 ranked school in whatever the subject matter is. What about the cost? Some people are more cost averse or less cost averse. So I think it's important to understand where you're willing to make trade-offs or sacrifices to achieve your goals. That said, once you have identified, a list of target programs that could help you achieve your goals, I highly recommend making an Excel spreadsheet that just has all of the information. So what are the deadlines for each of these schools? What are the requirements? If they have essays, what are the different essay prompts that you're going to have to respond to? What are the costs for each school? If there's scholarship opportunities, how do those work? So really just get organized. And as a coach who works with people who are applying to graduate schools, I'll tell you, you can really see the difference between the ones that are well organized and the ones that aren't. Zusel has let me know that Mexicans are often shy about contacting schools and talking to admissions offices. And I would say definitely do not be shy. So if you're interested in a school, especially if you have any questions about the application process, write to the school. Every school has an admissions team or an admissions director, and they love to hear from prospective candidates because, first of all, it lets them know that somebody's interested. But second of all, it lets them get a little sneak peek into who you are. So if you write a really nice professional message that says, dear admissions director, my name's Adam Halpert. I've been, researching your school. I'm really excited to be submitting an application in the next few weeks. And here's maybe a question or two that I have. They love that. And then they know to keep an eye out for your application. They might follow up with you if they have any advice for you. So definitely don't be shy to get in touch with your target school. And then another thing that I find really differentiates the well-prepared candidates versus the less prepared candidates is talking to either current students or alumni of your target program. So, for example, let's just say you want to apply for an MBA. Well, actually going on LinkedIn and searching for some alumni who've graduated from that school, sending them a quick message and saying, hey, here's my situation. I'm thinking of applying. Would it be possible to ask you a few questions about your experience there? You'll get so much good information from that process that you can feed into your essay or your interview. And not only that, but it will really help you determine if that school is the right school for you.
Okay, yeah, it's very important. I will just pause it a little bit to paraphrase it in Spanish,
Sure.
just to be sure that everybody understood. A ver, entonces nada más como repitiendo un poco lo que Adam nos dijo, que es muy importante que no nos dé miedo contactar a la universidad, escríbanles, y contactar alumnos de la misma universidad, ¿sale? Listo, pues que no tengan miedo, búsquenlos en LinkedIn, por ejemplo, que se hayan graduado de esa universidad, mándenles mensaje, oye, ¿cómo fue tu proceso de aplicación? Platícame cómo fue tu experiencia en la universidad, yo quisiera entrar a tu mismo programa, ¿sale? Listo. Si tienen preguntas, escríbanlas en el chat, les digo, y vamos a ir revisando. Okay, Adam, thank you. So once
I would add two more points on the pre-application.
Please.
So one of them is going to sound funny and maybe obvious, but it's important to pre-screen your LinkedIn profile and even more so your social media profiles because admissions directors or committees will go take a look at your Facebook profile or your Instagram profile or your TikTok. So
of course, because that tells you more than anything. Right?
Yeah. So you want to make sure there aren't pictures of you like getting drunk or doing things that So before you apply, professionalize. And then the last thing that I was going to say on the pre-application is obviously we're all in different situations in terms of our finances, our budget. And I always recommend that if you're not particularly cost averse, so if it's not important to like really, really save every dollar, I do recommend applying to multiple schools, as many schools as you can afford. Partly because just by going through the process, you'll start to understand really which school is the best fit for you, but also you increase your chances of being admitted and you increase your chances of getting the best scholarship possible. So maybe the $300 that you spend on another application might actually save you $5,000 because you get a better scholarship offer at a different school. Okay. So
that's very, very important, and it's something that nobody tells you. Entonces, dos cosas importantes que nos acaba de mencionar Adam es que cuiden pues sus perfiles sociales, de redes sociales, ¿no? Profesionalícenlos, quiten por ahí fotos donde salgan tomados o así, porque si se meten a buscarlas, bueno, o quizás no tengo que repetir en español porque todos saben muy bien inglés. Maybe I shouldn't repeat it, just to be clear. And for example, Adam, what is like an average cost for an application fee, like the minimum, the maximum, so we can start thinking in advance to save that money.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect it really, really varies depending on what part of the world you want to do your grad school in. But I would kind of ballpark, and I'll use American dollars simply because that's probably the best compromise between pesos and Canadian dollars. But I would say probably between $100 and $400 is kind of the range that most schools would operate in.
Okay. And Adam, that brings me to another question. How long do you recommend to start preparing your application process? Like, should I think on that 1 year, 2 years in advance? Kind of, what do you recommend or would recommend?
Yeah, that's a good question. Obviously, some people will reflect much longer on the decision to pursue graduate school. Something to bear in mind is that most graduate school programs have a series of application deadlines. So there might be an initial wave where they're asking for applications by, March 15th, and then they'll want the next batch by April 20th, and then the final batch, let's say, by June 1st, if you want to start the school in September. And I would say probably starting, if possible, you always want to be in the first batch.
I was going to ask that. Is it less probable to be admitted like in the second or third wave of admission?
Yeah, and so, most schools have a maximum number of students that they can admit.
Okay.
So at the beginning, they're just concerned with making sure they get close to that limit. So they're being a little bit more permissive. Then, obviously, as they're getting close to the limit in the second and the third round, they're starting to be a bit pickier and saying, okay, well, now we'll only admit someone if they really stand out. And I think maybe here I'd like to introduce an idea that I'm going to come back to throughout this entire talk. And that is whether you're applying for a job or whether you're applying for grad school, when you submit your application, this is what's going to happen. Somebody's going to look at you and they're either going to say yes, no, maybe, or rock star. Right?
Really?
You're either going to go into the yes pile, the no pile, the maybe pile, or the rock star pile. And obviously, you want to be in the yes or the rock star pile, preferably the rock star pile, because that's where you're going to have the best chance of an instant decision, big scholarship. You're going to get what you want. And so what we're going to be talking about throughout this presentation is whether it's your CV, whether it's your essay or your letter of reference or your interview, how can you best position yourself to hopefully be in that rock star category? And I want to give credit to my good friend Jamin Patel. He wrote a couple of books. He has a book called Networking Like a Rock Star, Interviewing Like a Rock Star.
Can you write it in the chat, Adam, please? The name of the author, so we can search a little bit about.
My YouTube login name is not very professional, so I'll do it. I'll do it anyways. Networking like a rock star, interviewing like a rock star. Jamin Patel, amazing guy, and he was the one who came up with that analogy of yes, no, maybe rock star. I want to give him credit for that. There's a lot of people doing really great work in the career placement, in the admissions consulting space, and so I'll mention a few of those as I go through this. There's another book that I'll highly recommend to people a bit later on.
Okay, but Paula is asking something that I think it would be interesting. If they should modify their social profiles to look like a certain type of, or something like that, or just, just remove the too personal things, right? Or control the security, not to create a fake profile or something like that.
No. So I see two questions, both from two different Paulas. So I'll maybe start with the first Paula.
Yes.
It doesn't really matter if you don't have social media at all. Many individuals hide their social media profiles when they're applying, so schools will not be surprised if they don't find anything. That said, if you do have online branding that makes you look good, that makes you look like someone who's an achiever, someone who's active, someone who has a lot of friends or a lot of professional contacts, someone who's kind and likable. All of those things are good. And so the one social media platform that's probably most relevant, both to job seeking and to applying to universities, at least in Canada and the United States, and probably in Europe too. I don't know how much the adoption is in Latin America, but that is LinkedIn. Yeah. And I actually have a couple of slides, if you're interested, that I can show you later. I think there's just a few. I think it's great to have a LinkedIn profile and just a few things to keep in mind. Okay. And to the other Paula's point, I think really it's just making sure that what's there is clean and professional. Yeah. And so, if that's just hiding specific content or hiding the whole thing, or if you take a look and think you're fine, you probably are. You probably know which photos you don't want.
Like the photos that you don't want your mom sees.
yeah, exactly. So,
okay. I think another common question is if I'm too old for applying. If I'm 30 and I want to apply for a master's degree, but I'm competing with guys of 22 years old, is that a disadvantage?
Yeah, and I would say that I mean, I think ultimately where we start to answer that question is, what is your eventual goal? I don't think that age in most cases is naturally a disadvantage, but certain programs will have expectations. So, for example, the MBA program that I worked in expected candidates to have between 3 and 8 years of work experience. And if you had 15 years of work experience, you're maybe a better fit for an executive MBA as opposed to a regular MBA. Some programs see themselves as what are called pre-experienced masters. So they're really looking for students coming directly from undergrad to go right into the masters. And that's important for them because that program might have a career services team. That career services team is going out and securing jobs for their candidates, and what they're telling employers is our candidates have 1 to 2 years of work experience, or not at all. So this is where you really want to think about what your goals are, what the program is, who it's tailored to, and there are some strategic considerations. So I'll give you 2 examples from the management world. I apologize that many of my examples will be management focused.
No, please.
Because I know some of you will have very specific interests, whether it's chemistry or physics or whatever, or languages. But for example, 2 of the most popular sought out jobs in management, if you do an MBA or a bachelor's of commerce or whatever, are in investment banking and in management consulting. Those are the two of the sexiest jobs that you can get. Wow. And the reality is, you could say, oh, I want to go do a master's program because I want one of those 2 jobs. But if you don't have the undergraduate grades, if you don't have a 3.9 GPA, if you don't have good work experience by the time you get into the program with brand name companies, there is very little chance that you will break into those industries because they're so competitive. So you can do the master's, but you're probably going to end up pivoting to a different goal. And again, this is where we come down to getting smart, understanding what you're trying to achieve, how the program will help you get there.
Okay. Wow. Very interesting. Thanks. Even we could start thinking in advance, all right, if I want to apply in 5 years, okay, then where should I work, or what kind of job should I work to be more related to that, right? Okay.
And I think I actually didn't answer your question earlier about how long in advance, but I would say 4 to 6 months before the deadline that you're planning on applying to is probably the sweet spot.
Okay, thanks. Perfect, Adam. Thank you. All right. I think those are just the questions related to this point. Si tienen algunas otras dudas, chicos, vamos a continuar con... Ok, todo esto es para antes de aplicar, ¿no? O sea, cuando están buscando opciones, contactan a los alumnos, hacen su tablita en Excel con todos los datos de cada universidad. No tengan miedo de aplicar a muchas, ¿vale? Y, okay, so let's suppose that we chose like 5 programs that we are interested in. Now, what are the most common requirements? Should I prepare everything should I write a different motivation letter for each university? That's or probably, right? Because like when you send a friendship, you want to.
Right. So I'll just say at a high level, most schools require the same things.
Okay.
They require your CV, or what's also called your resume. CV, resume is the same thing. They will require your transcripts from any prior schools where you studied. They will require usually an essay of some kind, and usually a letter of reference or 2. So that's typical. Okay. Some schools might require you to have written the GRE, the GMAT, or especially if Latin Americans are applying to English schools, they might have to have the TOEFL or some proof of English language capabilities. Increasingly, schools are, especially at the private level, like where you start to be paying into high-cost MBAs, EMBAs, stuff like that, private master's programs, they're increasingly using more sophisticated screening tools like video interviews. So you might need to record a video of yourself. You might need to fill out what's called a psychographic assessment. So you might need to do like a little quiz that's about your personality. Okay. But the basic ones that I see all the time that students will need to figure out are the CV, the essay or personal statement, and the letter of reference. Those are the big ones.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, so where should we start? Let's start with the motivation letter, Adam. Okay.
So I'm actually going to disagree with you, and I'm going to suggest we start with the CV.
Okay.
This is why I'm going to disagree with you.
Okay.
Because when you're sitting down and you have a personal statement or an essay that you have to write, you're going to say, what could I write? What information could I put down? But that's where your resume is basically like a giant map of everything that you could use. And so that's why I might use the terms CV and resume interchangeably, but that's why I really suggest start with the CV. And I think that's where we should start. So again, let's step back. What is the goal? Someone's going to read your CV. What do you want to happen? You could be yes, no, maybe, rock star. So you want somebody to read your resume and right away go, wow, this person's really impressive. They seem really smart. They seem really hardworking. I'm interested in knowing more about this person.
Okay.
So in general, I would say for 99% of graduate school candidates, I highly recommend a 1-page resume or CV. And I know it can be hard. I know it can be difficult to get everything into 1 page, especially if you've done like a lot of internships and you have a lot of shorter term experiences. But the reality is when you think about the life of an admissions officer and they're going through all of these candidates, all of these different documents for each candidate, it just makes their life much easier if you do the work of streamlining and telling them where they need to pay attention.
Okay.
So I recommend 1 page. Zeus, do you have a question?
No, please.
Okay.
Continue.
Sorry, I speak quickly and I get excited. So
it's very interesting. Keep it.
Definitely feel free to interrupt me. And so, another question that comes up all the time is, should I have it designed? Should I try to have a really cool design? Should I have a photo? And ultimately, I call this the debate between style and substance. Okay. And at the end of the day, I'm much, much bigger believer in substance over style. When I work with my clients, we use a really simple but clean professional design. It doesn't have a spot for a picture. I often find when candidates are making like really cool looking resumes, it's not worth the trade-off. So what they'll very often do with a design resume is they'll have 2 columns And on this column, they might put their education or their skills. They might use those little like bubbles to fill up the skills or the languages. The problem is when something is condensed into half of a smaller column, it's hard to read. You can't expand and add details. When you just see skills and those little bubbles, like you can be saying anything you want. I'm not seeing any proof. So I really recommend clean, professional. There's many, examples if you do a Google search. If anybody wants to follow up with me, we can talk about what a good, resume looks like visually. I apologize. I hear like cars beeping outside. I don't know if you can hear that.
No.
Okay. No. So what ultimately, if you're trying to be a rock star, you've got your one-page resume, very professional, and what you're trying to showcase to be a rock star is achievement, leadership.
That's important. I will write it in the chat.
Yeah. Achievement, leadership, and problem solving. Those are like the three big headers that will, will make someone stand out. And if you think about where can you demonstrate those qualities, this asks the question, well, what can I write on my resume or what can I write on my essay? Well, your grades, whether you've won awards or scholarships, the jobs that you've secured and what you've done at those jobs. If you've ever started an organization, an entrepreneurship or a club, your volunteering, your extracurriculars, all of these things can show achievement, leadership, problem solving, and can help you stand out.
Okay, so again, leadership, achievements.
Yeah, and problem solving.
Problem solving. Okay, so do you recommend telling some problem that you solved, like some in a company or like in this specific area? I solved this. Okay.
Yes, and I'll actually. I'm going to talk about what I call achievement bullets, but what you might just call bullets. When you have a job on your CV, you write bullets underneath. Yeah. So I'm going to talk about in a second how to think about those bullets and maybe start building really good bullets.
Okay. Bullets? What do you mean with bullets? Like points?
So points.
Okay.
Yeah. In English, we call them bullet points. Or we say you're writing in point form. So I call them achievement bullets.
Perfect. Okay, thanks. A ver, entonces nada más parafraseando un poquito. Está súper interesante porque uno piensa que haciendo un CV así que te hizo el mejor diseñador, que parece increíble, va a ser mejor. Pero fíjense, ¿no? No es necesario que sea tan vistoso el CV, sino que tenga bastante contenido y que sea legible. Okay, yeah.
Continue?
Yeah, please.
I got more. I can keep going for a while.
Yeah,
so.
No. It's so interesting. I want to see this video again.
Yeah.
I probably will do it by myself and students.
The good news is that this content is not just about applying to grad school. This content will also help you get jobs. So you want to demonstrate achievement, leadership, problem solving, and you have all these different educational experiences, jobs, volunteering, and hobbies. So when you're actually structuring your CV, this is what I recommend, again, for 95% of candidates. So you're going to have these 4 sections. So this is what I would do. Section 1 is education. Section 2 is professional experience. Section 3 is something like leadership and extracurricular. So it's everything that you're doing outside of school and work. And then section 4 is what I call skills and interests. In skills and interests, you can highlight your technical skills, which will be very important in some fields, your language skills, which are very important as you're, thinking about strategizing in your career. And I always do recommend having a line for interests. It has to be professional. But what that does is that humanizes you. And I'll give you an example. When I was coaching MBA students at McGill, one of my students was from Brazil. And in Brazil, he had been doing competitive escape rooms. So I don't know if you know what an escape room is, but it's like a game. You go to this place, they give you like a mystery, and you and a team have to solve it and figure out the clues and then escape the room within a certain number of time. And so he was doing like the hardest escape rooms in Latin America, traveling around with his team of Brazilians and doing this. And he put that at the bottom of his resume. Every single interview that he ended up being very successful, getting, very high quality jobs in Canada. Every interview he went to, they were like, tell us about this escape room. Like, what's this all about? And it created a connection, right? And ultimately, that's a big part of getting a job or getting admitted, is creating a connection if you're being interviewed, being likable, being interesting.
Something different,
so that's
right? That makes you like they see you and they will remind that.
Yeah, something that makes you a whole person.
Sorry, Adam, do you recommend? Some people add a short, cover letter, but like a short description behind their name, like, my goal is this and this. Do you recommend writing that short description, or maybe not?
So I call that that's a great question, actually. And that could be the fifth section that I might consider. I call that I call that section, when I add it to my clients' resumes, I call that profile, or I call that summary statement.
Okay.
For most people who are applying to master's degrees, who are probably going to be below the age of 30, in general, I would say it's not necessary. I generally think it gets more valuable when someone is really a senior candidate, when someone's got like 10, 20 years of work experience that they need to find a way of summarizing. Then I'll usually work with them to create a summary statement. The other case where it can be helpful to have a summary statement is if your background doesn't really make sense for what you want to do. So if you're changing careers, and let's just say, I don't know, you studied fashion and now you want to do accounting, then maybe that there's some things you're currently doing. You're maybe taking some financial accounting courses on the side, or a certification, or I don't know what. Then it might be helpful to have that profile statement to explain a little bit more about the transition you're making and why you're a good fit. And when you think about that, it's because when someone looks at your CV, literally within 5 to 10 seconds, they're going to make a judgment about you, about whether you're a rock star and about whether you make sense for whatever the opportunity is. And so if they just open up your resume and the very first thing they see at the top is like fashion design or fashion marketing, and they're like, wait, why are you applying for an accounting school? Then you can get around that by, in your profile, having something to do with accounting. So immediately you've changed the first impression.
Qué interesante, thanks. That's very, I will repeat it in Spanish because I want to tell that to everybody. Well, especially in my case, I changed from programming to teaching English, right? So that can help guiding the advisors or the companies. Entonces, lo que nos dice Adam es que les recomienda añadir como esa descripción pequeñita al inicio de tu CV, si ya tienes bastante experiencia o si estás como cambiando de profesión, intentando un proyecto diferente, porque si no, se van a confundir muchísimo cuando vean en tu perfil, caray, o sea, estudié esto, pero que estoy aplicando para otra posición, ¿no? Es muy buen consejo. Evelyn, again, I think we didn't ask you like directly that, but do you pay attention to the pictures? Do you recommend adding a picture in your CV? Because I have heard that it's different in the States, in Canada, than here. What do you think when you are checking CVs? Do you pay attention to their face?
Yeah. So I'm going to speak very directly.
Yeah.
The way that you look matters a lot in life. It matters in terms of how people respond to you. It will affect your chances of getting a job. So to answer the question that you just asked, in general, I do not put or advise my clients to have pictures. And that this would be true mainly for the United States, Canada, and Western Northern Europe, I would say. But there are definitely places in the world where it is absolutely expected that you will have a picture. For example, the Philippines, you're expected to have a picture on your resume. The reality is, even if you don't have a picture on your resume, the recruiter or the admissions person, they're going to go check you out. They're going to go look at your Facebook. They're going to go look at your LinkedIn. So they're going to try to figure out what you're all about. I'm not saying a picture is a mistake, sure, but I think it really depends on the design of your resume. If you can find a way to add a picture, a nice looking professional photo that does not sacrifice design, like how things fit, fine, then that's no problem. Okay. But I don't think it's necessary for most European, Canadian, or American grad schools.
Okay. Gracias. Entonces, Evelyn, lo que nos dice Adam, si entendiste, o sea, si tienes una foto profesional que no vas a sacrificar mucho espacio en tu CV y no va a distraer del punto importante, sí, pero las universidades normalmente no van a fijarse en eso al principio, ¿no? Okay. All right. Thanks. Thanks, Adam. Wow, a lot of things. Probably you have. What should we avoid adding to our CV? Like, what mistakes? Like when you see a CV like contains this, you say, "Oh, no, please, no," and you put it in the pile of no's.
Sure. Uh-huh. So I see that there's been a question in the chat about the order on the resume. I'll just add one thing, because I talked about the structure, education, professional experience. One of the most common questions is what should go first. The general rule is you start with whatever you were doing last or most recently. So if you did your bachelor's degree in university and then now you've been working for 4 years and now you want to do a master's, normally professional experience would come at the top, then education would come further down. Okay. If you've just finished your bachelor's degree, then education comes. That's the general rule. You specifically as an individual, you may wish to break that rule. So let's just say, for example, you have amazing grades. You were the best in your class in your bachelor's degree. You might want to start with that just simply because that will make you stand out more. So again, sometimes we break the rules. Okay. To the most recent point that you asked, Zeus, about what are the mistakes that people make, I would say the biggest mistake that people make when constructing their CV or their resume is that their bullets, their achievement, under each job and maybe under school, they basically look like a job description. They just look like a task, like somebody just copy pasted from a job posting and put them right in. So what screened applications, like mailed marketing documents. It's not very impactful to just have tasks. And so that's why, I think we're going to end up going way over time here, Zeus. So let me know if you want to kind of zip along. No. Está muy interesante. I want to talk a little bit about a bullet. What goes into a bullet? Yeah. So you're going to have a lot of these on your resume. And I would say under each job and maybe under each university experience, you're going to want to have 3 or 4 or 5 of these bullets that explain what you did when you were at a particular organization. And if we think about the anatomy of a bullet, the components of a bullet, it can have 3 things. So a bullet can say something about your skills. What are the skills that you have that you bring to the table? The other thing that a bullet can do is it can say something about your achievement, what you concretely were able to do on a specific project or in a situation. And the third thing that a bullet can have is context. It can talk about the situation in which you use those skills to achieve something. So I'm actually going to share my screen for a second.
Please.
So here, hopefully you can see now. Mm-hmm. Does it work?
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
So here we have a bullet. I'll read it. Led a 4-person cross-functional team to complete a $2 million infrastructure project on budget, 30 days ahead of deadline, supervising all budget, scheduling, and operational issues. So this bullet gives us a lot of information. And I would say this is it's not a perfect bullet, and it'll really depend on what your background is, but it gives us different types of information. So here, actually, you see here, what I've done is I've now color-coded what is sending a signal about your skills, what is sending a signal about your achievement, and what is sending a signal about context. So for example, in terms of skills, I know from reading this bullet that you have team leadership experience. You have supervised a team. I also know that there's project management that you have as a skill, and in particular, financial and operational project management, right? So you've sent me a signal about what are the tasks that you can achieve for me. Then in terms of achievement, what were you concretely able to do while in this role? Well, you completed and delivered a $2 million project. That's not a small achievement. And not only that, but you did it within budget and ahead of the deadline. So those were things that you achieved. Then in terms of context, what do I know even more? Well, I know you can lead a team, but now I know that you can lead a 4-person team. It's not a 2-person team. It's not a 10-person team. It's a cross-functional team. So I know that you've got different skills. We're on that team. I know that you have experience in infrastructure, right? And that I know a little bit about the size of the projects that you've managed. So that might also be very useful information to me, especially when you're applying for jobs. So I just want to use this as an example of a bullet that gives you different types of information. Ideally, what you want is your CV to have these types of bullets that really show you, this is what I've achieved. These are the skills I bring to the table. And why? Because that's what's going to make you a rock star and not a no or a maybe, right?
Qué interesante. So, yeah, lo que nos acaba de explicar Adam, can you share us your screen?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Es que un error que cometemos, porque yo también lo he hecho, es que cuando damos la descripción de nuestros trabajos, ponemos como una descripción del puesto, qué hacía yo, y es lo que todos hacen en esa posición, ¿no? Entonces eso no dice nada realmente. Entonces, que lo que escribas, que el párrafo que escribas describiendo lo que hiciste, hable por sí mismo. Entonces, pues que mencione tus habilidades, algún logro y el contexto. Habla más de ti, explicar un logro específico que hiciste en ese trabajo. Okay, thanks. Very, very useful.
So, last thing I'm going to say.
My CV right now. I'm not to link it at the end of the conference.
It's really funny when I do resume workshops, because I'll do slides like this, and I'll just see everybody in the audience kind of going like this.
I shouldn't do this.
Yeah. So just to quickly finish up on the CVs, again, I apologize for speaking so long. Biggest mistake is bullets that are just copy pasted from a job description, because they're not making you stand out. I don't really get any information about what you did or whether you did it well. So that's one. Two, if a resume is too long or it's too condensed, there's not enough white space, there's too much information, it's just too hard to read. The minute I see it or an admissions person sees it, they're like, ugh, you're likely to go no. Next mistake, dishonesty. Anything you write on your resume, you must be able to defend it if it comes to an interview or if they check your references. So obviously a big part of constructing the resume is making yourself sound impressive, but it has to be defensible. It has to be close enough to the truth that you feel comfortable, backing it up. Another mistake is too much jargon. So jargon?
Technical words,
technical information.
Okay.
So we, especially in an MBA program, we get a lot of engineers who want to now stop being engineers and want to be managers. And they'll maybe have bullet points about the hydroelectric dam that they constructed and all of the different. You have to translate it so that a general audience person can read it. And then Obviously, spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes are a killer. It makes you look like you haven't, taken the time to do a good job. So that's not rock star. Inconsistencies in formatting or your bullets. If you're starting some bullets with verbs and some bullets with nouns, that's not the way you want to go. So it has to be consistent. The dates, the formatting, all of that stuff. All right, that's it for resumes.
Wow. No, muchas gracias. Entonces, ¿qué les parece? Ya están borrando las fotos de sus perfiles, ya están cambiando su CV. Ok, entonces, todo esto para preparar nuestro CV, ¿no? Que es lo primero que ven los reclutadores y reclutadores también del área académica. So, something that a lot of times we ask ourselves and the student asks to us is if we need to prepare a different CV for getting a job or for studying. So should I have like 10 CV versions or?
No, I don't think you need it. I think if you've done a good job constructing your CV, you don't need different versions. But the version, because if you do a good job and you have, the education, the job experiences, the volunteering, the skills, it's professional, it paints you like a rock star, then an employer or an admissions person are going to be equally happy to receive that.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Gracias, Adam. Bueno, entonces, el siguiente punto. The next point. I think I need to go for some water. Okay. So,
if you want, I can start talking about the essays and you can go get water.
No, está bien. No, after asking you. Okay, so let's suppose that I have my CV. And then I will start with my motivation letter, right? Which is very commonly asked for. Okay. So what do you recommend us here? Like, since how to start, what to include? Because sometimes we don't know if including something from our childhood, something from my mom, I'm being a little bit exaggerated, but how far should I go with the description of myself, the descriptions of the program, etc.?
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, I'll come back to your goal with the essay or personal statement or motivational letter. They're all different words for the same thing. Is again, you want to position yourself in the yes, no, maybe rock star or yes. So somebody would be very impressed when they read your letter. To answer the question that you just asked, there is no single approach or formula that is correct. Somebody might have an example from childhood that perfectly connects with a great achievement story and then their long run goal. Somebody else might not. So it really depends on your unique story. And I would say the most important thing is to start with the instructions. So what is the school asking you to do? And some schools will have very different instructions. There will not only be instructions about the content, what you should be writing, but sometimes there'll be instructions about the length or the formatting. And so the number one thing you must do is you must do what they want you to do and follow the instructions. So most motivational letters or essays are really a variance of one question, which is, why are you applying to this school and why are you a good fit? I would say 95% of situations you'll find yourself answering that type of question. But there are other types of questions as well, especially these days if you're applying, for example, for an MBA program. They might have all kinds of different scenarios that they're asking you to solve or to describe. So as an example structure that I might offer for 95% of people, something like this could work. Step 1. A brief introduction to yourself. Who are you and why are you writing? So I'm an MBA career coach with 8 years of experience in higher education, writing to apply for this, PhD in education program. So it's very simple at a very high level. You could even have a little bit of your passions in there, but it is who are you and why are you writing? And then the second section should be a short history of what you've actually done. So this will be, I started my career in this role where I had these responsibilities. It was fantastic. But then, I took the next step and I did this for 4 years. And so, I'm talking about, I'm approaching this as someone with, 10 years of work experience or more. But, this could easily be just about your bachelor's degree, the courses you took, the internships you did. So it applies to everybody.
Okay.
Step 3 would be an explanation of what is it that you'd like to do in the short term and the long run. So, in the long run, my dream is to be working in the nonprofit sector, addressing these types of issues, blah, 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 which then leads very cleanly into part 4, an explanation of why you've chosen this school and why this school will help you achieve your objectives. And so very clearly now you can see, okay, I understand this person, they're writing to apply for this program, okay, they have this type of work experience, this is the direction they want to go in the future, they've clearly made a link to how our school will help them get there. Hopefully they've been positioning themselves as a rock star all the way. Maybe when they're talking about the school, why you've chosen the school, I highly recommend giving very specific examples. Show that you've done your research, mention specific profs, specific courses, specific clubs, because what they're going to see when they read that is they're going to see this is a person who's done their homework.
Okay.
And then the 5th part is just a little conclusion that just reiterates you're excited to join this program, you're hoping to contribute and be a good community member, and that you thank them or you're grateful that they're considering your application. And that basic structure will work for most people. There's no doubt there are alternatives. Some people choose to open with like a catchy story about, something that happened when they were a child or, some difficulty they've gone through. That's fine too. But those are the basic points that you want to cover: what you've done in the past, what you want to do in the future, and why this school is going to help you get there.
Okay. And do you think we should expressively, like literally say, oh, I'm a good candidate because of this, and this, or not? Just explain what I have done and what I want to do and let them, like with the job advice. What do you think?
Yeah. I can go both ways, honestly. I don't feel strongly about that. Sometimes a line like that, I think about it actually more when I'm guiding someone in applying for jobs. So if I think of a cover letter or a motivational letter for a job, a structure that I like there is, here's who I am and why I'm writing to you. I'm applying for this job. Something about your company, like your company is really exciting to me because it's tackling these issues. And then it could be something like, I believe I'm a good fit for this role because you're going to need somebody who has qualities A, B, and C. And I'm going to tell you now about why I have those. And then paragraph 1 is all about how I've got A. Paragraph 2 is all how I've got B. Paragraph 3 is how I've got C. And if you've really done your homework and you know what's involved in doing that job, then that can be very persuasive, because by the time they've read that, they're like, wow, this candidate is really bringing the skills that we need. For an admissions essay, if you think about it, the school is not thinking as concretely about the skills that it needs in candidates. So I don't think it's as powerful.
Okay.
But I think it's fine to say,
more about the projects, right? The projects that you want to, or that you have done, you want to do.
Yeah, it's like the big picture fit. And I would say, if you want to include a line in the conclusion, you explain, I'm really excited to join this program because it's going to help me take these next critical steps in my career. I believe I'm a good fit because of A, B, and C. Thanks for your consideration. I think that's fine.
Okay. Entonces, que no es necesario, chicos, que pongamos como expresamente en las cartas de motivación, yo sería un buen alumno de tal universidad porque soy así, así y así, ¿no? Como mencionando explícitamente tus cualidades, sino más bien los puntos que nos mencionó Adam, ¿vale? Adam, could you please repeat the 5 important points that students be missed in a application, in a motivation letter?
Sure. So the three, it was really three important points that shouldn't be missed, and then with some
extra.
I don't know what the word I'm looking for. Yeah, like it's almost like a sandwich. Okay. It's like there's three important pieces inside the sandwich, and then there's the bread on the outside. So the three most important things are, what have you done so far, whether that's school or work or certifications. What is it that you want to do in the future? Okay. And that can be both long-term and short-term. Okay. And how is this school, this opportunity, going to help you achieve those career goals? Those are the three most important things. The other two components were the introduction and the conclusion were the other two.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Where that is where we can add a catchy story or.
Yeah, and I want to tell, actually, if I can take another 2 minutes, I want to tell a story
please,
here.
Please.
So my key message here is don't be afraid to be bold.
To be what? I'm sorry?
Bold.
Bold. What do you mean?
Bold. Like take risks. Like think big, right?
Okay.
Think inspirational.
Okay, like I want to do this project. Okay.
So think about this. As we're growing up, we do everything possible not to stand out. We do everything possible to fit in, because when we're kids, if we stand out, we're weird. We get picked on, right? We get bullied. So often as we're growing up, we're conditioned, blend in. Blending in is safe. But when you're applying for jobs or when you're applying for schools, you want to stand out. And so when I say be bold, it's about helping yourself stand out. Take risks, shoot big. And here's an example. So I was recently helping a candidate who was applying for an executive MBA at MIT in the States. She was from Africa. She had been very successful in her career, clearly a rock star. She stood out. She was a member of, Obama had like an African scholars program to recognize high potential scholars and give them scholarships and give them opportunities to meet with the United Nations and do all kinds of skill building. She had started her own mentorship program for young African girls so that they could learn to code, right? Like this is a big issue now is encouraging young women to pursue careers in STEM. So she had done all of this amazing stuff. She's currently at Facebook, where she is leading global integrity operations, meaning when a company wants to advertise on Facebook, their advertisements have to fit the integrity guidelines. You can't have alcohol or gambling. So incredibly successful woman applying to top program. And one of the prompts that they wanted her to write an essay about was, tell us about a time that you had made an organization more equitable, diverse, and inclusive. This is a very big theme in management now. It's called EDI, equity, diversity, and inclusiveness. It's about making sure we're fair and inclusive across genders, across races, across ages. So she drafted this first draft of an essay. And this essay was about how she, when she was hired, she made some changes to Facebook's hiring processes on her team so that it was a bit more fair. And I read it and I was like, it's not bad, but it's not whoa. Yeah. And I said to her, I was like, I think you need to be more bold. Instead of writing an essay about how you made an organization more equitable, diverse, and inclusive, you need to write an essay about how you made a country more equitable, diverse, and inclusive. And we're going to write about that mentorship program that you founded, you established, that has now had, 300 girls go through this coding program. That's not 100% the question that they asked, but I thought it was a worthwhile substitute. And that's what's going to make you stand out. And she was like, whoa, okay. So we redid the essay. The essay was super powerful. We both loved it. We're still waiting to hear if she's getting into MIT, but that's an example of what I mean by
como que no, es muy común aquí que nos hacemos, we want to be humble, right? As you're explaining, like, and especially in Mexico, it's very common, like, if you talk about your goals or if you I don't know, you don't want to make the others feel bad, something like that. So you are used to, as you said, to not mention your achievements. And here is a place where you be sure of yourself. Like tell them what things you have done well.
This is one of the hardest parts of applying for jobs and applying to graduate schools, is getting that fine line right between humility and being humble and being somebody who's likable, but sharing what is special about you, what is impressive about you. It is possible, right? As a coach, that's a big part of where I add value and adjust the writing.
Because you also don't want to look as very arrogant or I'm the best in the world and I don't need help, right? So I don't need this your university. Well, he doesn't need that. Or she
and in this case, for example, she could say, I recognize the need for this. I recognize an opportunity, and I am very, grateful that I had the support of X, Y, and Z, and who helped me make this happen. And I'm super proud now to say that we were able to create this thing that 300. So, there's a way of saying it that doesn't make it sound like I'm the coolest person in the world.
Okay, gracias. Yeah. Entonces, lo que nos menciona Adam con Be Bold es que, o sea, mencionen sus sueños, ¿no? Los proyectos que quieren lograr, o sea, los anhelos que tengan. Y también que reconozcan en sí mismos lo que han logrado, ¿no? Sin hacernos así como, ay, pequeñitos. It's in fact like you are like a psychologist, Adam, I guess, when you are helping the students, right? Because you need to help them to recognize their achievements, right?
And I didn't mention this at the beginning. I mean, my bachelor's degree is in psychology. But I actually am certified as a CPCC, certified professional coactive coach. It's basically a life coaching certification. And so I didn't mention this either, but I've been a financial advisor. So I've been a life coach. I've been a career coach. I've been a financial advisor. I have spent the most part of my life working with individuals to figure out what their dreams are, what is it that they want to achieve, and then helping them design strategies for making those come true. And I'm also, I would say I was very lucky early on. I'd had a lot of writing jobs. I was a writer and editor at a publishing firm. I worked at SAP as a writer and editor. So I'm able to put those different puzzle pieces together because that's what it takes when you're thinking about your personal branding and how to apply for jobs, how to apply for grad schools.
Okay. Like to sell yourself in a certain way, right? Okay.
Yep.
Fernanda, well, Paula asked if you work in something that it doesn't exist anymore, so there is no references on internet or something like that, and could seems as a lie, or should she remove it? Or I mean, no, right?
No, you
because
absolutely
she worked in that, and it was a real project. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just because it's not, searchable anymore doesn't mean it's not real. And especially if that's a big part of your career story. And again, something that we'll talk about in interviews, if we talk about interviews, is humans, and I will apologize in advance for the curse word, humans have really good bullshit detectors. So we are really good at knowing when something's wrong, when someone's lying to us, or when someone's not telling us the whole truth. And so in general, if you're being sincere about you worked for this company for 5 years and then it went bankrupt or whatever, 99% of the time people are going to believe you and they're going to evaluate your whole candidacy. So definitely tell the truth and tell the whole story.
Okay. Fernanda, we will talk a little bit about the interview. Fernanda is asking that if you went to the next step, we will go through the reference letter.
Sure.
We are should we ask for a reference letter from a teacher that, I don't know, usually are from teachers, right? Or ex-bosses, but should I choose someone that I worked or studied with recently? Sometimes teachers tells, please write your reference letter, and I will just sign it or something like that because they are very busy. What are your recommendations for? I will just go for a glass of water, but please.
Sure. So definitely with letters of reference, again, what you're trying to achieve is that somebody reads the letter and they say, wow, this person's a rock star. We definitely are interested in having this person in the program. I would say the biggest rule about a letter of reference is that you want to have it from somebody who knows you well. So very often I'll have candidates who are thinking about getting a letter from a prof because they're really just trying to think, okay, who could write me a letter? At the end of the day, you have to pick somebody who can really speak to who you are and what you've done. That might be a professor, that might be a manager, that might be a colleague, but wherever possible, you're balancing somebody who can say something really nice about you and somebody who can provide real detail about that nice thing. And so I would say kind of in order of preference, direct supervisor is probably the best. Who, if you have a good relationship and they really like you, that's probably the best. If you have a prof with whom you've really worked with closely, maybe you were the research assistant or, you really worked together on something, then that would be totally fine. A colleague can be okay. If you've really worked with a colleague and they have something impressive to say, but that's a little bit, iffy because, you could in theory just iffy.
Tricky?
It's not as credible because
it could be your friend.
Yeah, exactly. So there's less chance that your manager was your friend, right?
Okay.
Yeah. And so, it's always hard, but you do the best you can. I mean, with the people who you could approach, it's very normal that they will ask you to draft the first version. And that's fine. So I think it works out better for everybody for that to be the case. Within that, and so normally what I would do is I would draft the first version myself, and then I would share it with the referee, and I would say, feel free to make any changes. You're at the end of the day, whatever you want to write is fine. I'm just trying to help out, and I really appreciate you doing this. I normally recommend starting the draft with how you know each other. Okay. So, it might start off with, Adam Halpert asked me to write a letter of reference on his behalf for this program. I was Adam's direct supervisor at this company for 4 years. So the context, always make sure the context is clear. And then you typically want to end it with an endorsement. So for this person saying, I think Zeus will be a great candidate for your program, and I highly recommend her. Okay. So that's the kind of the start and the finish. Okay. And then in the middle is, it's what that person has seen in you. And there's no strict formula for that, but I would just say it should be a mix of what I call soft claims. Zeus is hardworking. Zeus is likable. All of the adjectives that we use to describe each other, with specific examples of what Zeus did and achieved. Because
not just a list of.
No, because honest, anybody can say I've got great communication skills. But when you tell a story about how in this role, in this task, you faced this challenge and this person was upset and these were the steps that you took to resolve the issue, then I'm way more willing to believe you that you've got good communication skills. So that's why specific examples are important for substantiating the soft claims that you make.
Ok, qué interesante. Entonces lo que nos comenta Adam es que en sus cartas de referencia, primero pues que sea alguien que los conoce bien, que pueda hablar con más detalles y que no solo sea la lista de características, ¿no?, positivas, sino que, por ejemplo, en esto demostró que es así. ¿Cuánto tiempo se conocieron? ¿Tienen alguna pregunta, chicos? Do you have any question about the reference letters? Nara asked how many reference letters are needed. It depends, right, of each university. Some universities ask you. And something else, Adam, is it common that the universities ask you for the contact of your reference and they contact them? Are they contact them or not that common, or should we provide extra details about that or not?
So typically schools will not follow up with your references.
It's too much work. It would be
and the stakes are not that high for a school. Think about it. A school is going to admit 60 to 300 students. If they make one bad hire, one bad admit, it's not the end of the world. Whereas with a company who's hiring you and you're going to be the one person, it's a much bigger deal for them to check the references. So I would say on average, schools ask for 2. Many schools will ask for 3. And sometimes now what we're seeing more and more often is that when you're submitting your application, you will put in the contact info, which is mainly email address is how they're contacted. Then once you submit your application, your referee will receive an email that asks them to log into an online system and just fill in some fields, which makes it harder to give them the first draft. But again, very often what they'll do is they'll come back and they'll say, okay, Adam, I logged in and these are the fields. You can give me the first draft. Or they're easy enough that the person is comfortable just filling them in. There still are many schools who use kind of the older version where you just kind of get a PDF, put the PDF with your application, and I'll just plant a seed here. This is one of those cases where I think it's okay to break the rules. If a school asks you for 2 letters of reference, it's totally okay to submit 3. And again, this can position you as that rock star who is an achiever, who's going above and beyond, 3 great references. So if you happen to be in the very fortunate situation of not applying to that many schools or having very, very supportive referees, then think about potentially, if you really, really want to get into a school, think about submitting an extra letter of reference as a bonus. Yeah.
Okay. Bueno, están preguntando how much personal information should we give in our letters? Like if I'm married, if I have children, how much of your personal life should you include?
None. None unless it's directly relevant to the course.
My lovely dog.
So I'll give you an example. I was just working with a candidate who had an accounting background. She had worked as an accountant for many years, and she was then looking for a change, and she actually became a sheriff. She became a law enforcement officer, and she switched for 5 years, and she had a daughter. And she realized that it wasn't safe. As a mom, she didn't feel like being in law enforcement was the most responsible decision for her family. So she decided she wanted to go back to accounting, but the pivot that she was going to use was she was going to do a master's degree in accounting. So in that case, it was so core to her story and also helped explain these really big career switches. And also, it's not controversial to have a daughter. You know what I mean? Like that's something that most people look at and go, "Wow, the love that you have for your daughter. It makes you like her more." So again, you use your judgment about what information to include.
But if it's not related to the story, why? Right?
No, and I'm speaking from a Canadian perspective, which will be fairly similar in the United States, in the UK, and most parts of Western Northern Europe. It's actually important when you're applying for jobs and to a lesser extent schools not to include that information because we have laws in our countries that prevent discrimination based on marital status, sexual orientation, age, right? So you're not supposed to write.
Sí, no. Claro, no. Sí, no. Yo también recomiendo igual en español que no pongan, no importa, ¿no? Para que no te discriminen si tienes hijos, estás casada, tienes 5 hijos y eres mamá soltera. O sea, no importa, ¿no? Preguntan, bueno, 2 other questions. Um, well, those are a little bit more specific. Even I told Adam, no, I think we shouldn't talk about that, but they are asking about. So, about GMAT and GRE, estos exámenes son muy comunes, requeridos. Es como una escoba, como un Ceneval principalmente para ingenierías, o sea, posgrados en áreas de ingeniería. Do you have some general recommendation for this standardized test?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote the GMAT myself. I've seen with many candidates how a high GMAT score can help, position you again. Yes, no, maybe rock star. High GMAT helps you go into that yes or rock star. Low GMAT, maybe or no. So again, all of these are factoring into that big picture impression of you. And I mean, the simplest advice that I can give you for the GMAT is start preparing early. There are prep books, prep programs, there are practice tests. Do them, take them seriously. If you can't figure out a specific mathematical or linguistic component, seek help. Get someone to help you figure it out, because they can be figured out. Obviously, the reason you're here today is because you have some interest in the English course that Zusel is offered. So the English is definitely going to help with the verbal part of the GMAT. So take your English development seriously. Other than that, there's not a whole lot more that I can say about the GRE and the GMAT. If you don't get a good score, one of the good things about starting early is that if you don't get a good score, you can retake it. And that's totally okay. There's many people who start off and maybe get a 650, take it again, get a 700. So don't hesitate to take it again. Again, it's just a little bit of cost and time, but it can definitely be worth the payoff if you do a good job on it.
Mm-hmm. Laura, I have some material if you want for GMAT or GRE. I mean, I have some digital books. And Gemma is telling us that she's a member of Mensa. I think totally, Gemma. But let's see what Adam says. High IQ society. Should I include it, or might it look bad?
Yeah, I think it would be okay to include. I'll be honest with you, I don't know a lot about Mensa, like if you have to submit something to be formally admitted. But if so, then that's even more credible. And then that would probably go down into that leadership and extracurricular section. And again, that would be even more powerful if you could put a bullet underneath it about something that you've done within Mensa. You've participated in it somehow. Again, I don't know, because I don't know a whole lot about Mensa, but just putting an organization on your resume is not particularly powerful. I mean, the other place where it could go in the interest section, but I'm not sure what you would say in the interest section about having a high intellect. So that's one of those like individual scenarios where I would have to sit down with you, have a conversation about it, and I'd make a judgment call one way or another about whether I would recommend it.
And Adam, for example, talking about English language in your profile or in your CV, is it different when they write up the points, right, the score, or have you seen these CVs where they say, "Oh, I speak 90% of English"? Or I don't know if that's just here in Mexico, but here it is very common. Like you just see English, advanced English.
So at the bottom of a resume, which is where I usually put languages for my clients. Usually, I will use 3 kind of different possible labels for a language. I'll either say fluent, I'll say conversational, or I will say beginner. Those are like the 3 levels. So that's how I simplify it. Okay. To be honest with you, I am mostly working with English clients. Sure. So if you're a Mexican and Spanish is your first language and you have taken some English courses and you've done the TOEFL or whatnot, I think the way that you can substantiate that or build credibility behind your English skills besides having an excellently written letter and an excellently written CV, is you can put your TOEFL scores or your English test scores on there. At the end of the day, if you have a nicely written CV and a nicely written letter, and your bachelor's transcript says that you have a 3.90 equivalent, really strong GPA, they're going to trust you. They're going to trust you're a smart person. You can figure out the English. So, yeah.
Okay, Adam. Gracias. Ay, super interesante. I'm just telling, what interesting talk. Thank you so much, Ada. And okay. And just, okay, so we sent all our papers and we paid them. I sent it to 10 universities. Then how can I overcome the anxiety or overcome the rejection or some, because I have here experiences from people that gets very depressed, like, because you tried a lot, right? It is a tough process. You prepare a lot, you pay, spend a lot of money. What do you recommend us after the application process?
Yeah, and I wish I had like golden tidbits, golden pieces of advice to give you there. I'll say a couple of different things. One, as you're going through the process, if you make a mistake somewhere along the lines, or if you feel like something didn't go well, because many processes will involve interviews where you'll actually have to interview with a school in order to be admitted, and you make a mistake or you answer a question poorly, I would say don't over exaggerate the influence of making a mistake. So I'll tell you another fun story. One of my MBA students at McGill was trying to do some networking with a company that he wanted to work for. So he was writing emails to senior managers and basically asking them if he could have a short conversation with them. And I honestly don't remember what he showed me, but he wasn't getting responses. And he came to my office and he showed me the email that he had sent to this woman who was a very senior manager, very successful woman. And the conclusion that we came to was like, oh, wow, you need to send an apology. Like something he had written was just so poorly communicated that, and this never happens. Like I never am with a client where I'm like, you need to write an apology. But we decided that in his case, he should write an apology. So I helped him with an apology note. He sent it off to her and indicated he'd still love to talk if she was willing. He never heard back. So he was like, okay, that bridge is burned. 4 months later, that company posts an internship position on LinkedIn. So he's like, oh, this is my dream position. So he applies. And he's lucky enough to get a first round interview. So he gets a first round interview. He goes to the interview. It goes well. And then he's coming home and he's waiting to hear what's going to happen next. And then he gets an email that says he's advancing to the second round. And guess who's interviewing him in the second round? Wow. But the woman who he had written this terrible email to, and then the apology, and he was like, I'm screwed. There's no way. And then he's like, Adam, what do I do when I go into the interview? Should I talk about it right away and just apologize again? And in the end, I was like, you know what? Who knows what's going on here? Don't mention it. Go in, be professional, be cool, do the best you can, and that's it. And if she brings it up, you can talk about it, but otherwise, no. He gets the job. Wow. He goes through, it never comes up. She likes him. She gives him the job. I can't tell you the number of times that I have been with a candidate who, had an interview, screwed up a question, and they were like, oh, man, I totally screwed that up. I'm not going to get the job. And then they end up getting the job offer. So just remember, if you're nervous or if you're screwing up any one part of anything, there's other candidates who are nervous as well. So have faith. I also know of so many cases where people try to apply for grad schools or they tried to apply for jobs and they got rejected and they were very depressed. And then, 6 months later, they either reapplied or they applied for something different. They got amazing opportunities. They got in and they're so happy. And they maybe even feel that they're happier now than they would have been had they, gotten into that original opportunity. And so, I would say don't be too attached to any one job or any one school. That's the other thing, is it's often the most ambitious candidates who get rejected, because they're the ones who are applying to the top schools, right? There might be one candidate who's super ambitious, so they're applying for 5 schools: Harvard, MIT, Princeton, Yale, Duke. Let's just say 5 really of the best schools in the United States. And they don't get into any of them because they're trying to get into the most competitive pools. Meanwhile, there's somebody else who only applied to 3 schools, but they're not as competitive and they get into all 3. So, that's one of the reasons why I say apply to a wide variety of schools. Give yourself as much chance as possible. It's a little bit more work, a little bit more money. And I would say don't beat yourself up. If you think of a mountain, there's a lot of different ways to get to the top of it. It's not just one path. So.
Ay, qué buen consejo, Adam. Gracias. So, yeah, sometimes we attach our happiness too much to that goal, right? Like, I will be happy if I join to this university, and maybe life brings you in other paths or other programs or other opportunities. Okay, Adam.
Yeah.
Ay, qué bien, qué motivante. Muchas gracias. Thank you so much, Adam. Guys, Doris, do you have questions about anything that we talked? Adam will write us his profile. Could you write your contact email or your LinkedIn profile or your professional contact on the chat?
So I'll just say very quickly, there's a few topics that we didn't talk about. We didn't talk about interviewing. We didn't talk about networking. We didn't talk about LinkedIn. I can talk about all of those, and they're just as interesting. They're just as strategic. There's a couple of different places where you can contact me. So the Fiverr link that I just put in the chat is where a lot of my private clients contact me. You can also reach me by email. I'll put my email in the chat. This is what I'm using.
Uh-huh. Pues la verdad vale la pena, ¿no? Si estamos gastando en un montón de pasos para el proceso y tenemos la meta importante y vamos a sacrificar y invertir tiempo, pues vale la pena tener a un asesor profesional, ¿no? Que nos oriente. Eso puede causar una diferencia en el proceso. Muchas gracias, Adam. Thanks, Adam, for your email and your profile. Thank you, guys. I will do my... Yeah, there are too many topics. Maybe for another talk, Adam. I will be inviting you again. I want to know more about everything.
Sure. Like I said, I could probably do a whole workshop on each one of these topics, and so it's hard to combine them into one. But I do want to say, if you look at this channel, Zeus did a Dream Job Masterclass in June, I think, of last year. That was excellent. So if you're interested in these topics, definitely go back and watch that video as well, because there really was some good information there.
Mm-hmm. Muchas gracias, Adam. Thanks. Thank you, guys. I hope you learned as much as I did. And see you soon. You are welcome. If any of you is interested in the course that we offer, you can contact us in the Facebook page or by messages, and that's all. Okay. Thanks, guys. Have a nice weekend. Thanks, Adam. See you soon.
Thanks, everybody. Cheers.
Muchas gracias. Adiós, chicos. Buen fin de semana. A ver, entonces voy a terminar aquí la transmisión.